What's up, guys? I'm J-Rod of BLACKEST with the one and only, I'm gonna give you now the most, extracurricular, introduction ever. The one and only! I thought it'd be fun to do something a little different. Normally, if I do a top 10 list, it's just in front of me, I'm talking, or I have just some visuals up. Here, I thought it'd be really cool to actually have Sir Apple as we talk about my top 10 favorite comic book artists. So what was your joke, by the way?
I'm sorry, your wiener's distracting me.
You mean this wiener right here?
Oh yeah, this one too.
This is a Christian channel.
Not anymore. Hey, we're married, we're Christian.
So I think it's fair before we dive into the actual 10 list, and keep in mind, this was a tough list to make. This was a really tough list to make. I struggled to make this list, so I have to mention 3 honorable mentions, and I'm gonna name them off. Let me know if you know anything about them, and I think it's gonna basically be me just talking for a bit, and Sarah throwing in a couple, whatchas in there.
Yeah, mostly everything that I know about them is stuff that you've told me. So me, with my own personal opinions, I do not have.
Well, I do have books, so you can actually comment on the styles if you want.
Okay.
So, honorable mention number 1 is going to be Frank Joe. I absolutely love his work. I think he is a master when it comes to drawing people, especially the female form. I mean, I do have his book on it right there. But legitimately, the guy's just insane, super talented. He's able to render both the human form and animals and dinosaurs. Just the guy can draw almost anything. Really big fan of his art, but he made it in the top 13. Number 12, I gotta give it to Frank Miller. Early Frank Miller. His work on Sin City, while I'm not a fan of the comic itself, is absolutely gorgeous with the visuals. The man is a master use of negative space and is able to craft some of the most interesting compositions just in black and white. And as an inker, that's kind of important and I find very interesting to me.
I also do think that negative space art is really beautiful, and it has its own challenges in it.
Exactly. And early Frank Miller, he could really master it very well. And the guy's a talented writer. I mean, he did write 2 of the best Batman stories ever. I mean, we still pull from those for the movies. He saved Daredevil from obscurity. He created the character that inspired Samurai Jack Ronin. He did a lot. It's just somewhere in the void of the 90s, he lost his mind. And I don't know why.
Negative space.
Negative space. And number 11 has to be my man Steve Rude. This is actually a very special mention because this is actually one of my dad's favorite artists, to the point where he actually bought the book. I didn't buy this book. He bought this himself. And he is one of our favorite artists. He is a huge Space Coast fan. Both me and my dad are, but so is Steve Rude. His character Nexus is basically God's Space Coast, and I absolutely love his work. He's one of the first artists that actually incorporated more painting techniques into his art, but absolutely amazing. I love his stuff.
Although that image is a little bit like a really scary constipated look right there. She's very happy to be constipated, but that's spooky.
Yeah, but his art's really good.
Spooky. It's
yeah, that definitely lit on the spooky side. Number 10 has to go to Alex Ross, and I love his work. I have Mythologies, Marvelocity, and Rough Justice, which is his sketchbook. I am a huge fan of Alex Ross. The man is the Norman Rockwell of comics. Now, I had to study gouache in college and really enjoyed it. However, just seeing his process, seeing him work, really wanted me to just learn more about gouache. I've been using it for 3 years. I absolutely love it, and just his work is just inspiring to me. I mean, looking at his stuff, it really is easy to see these characters exist, that they're real, that they have a changeability to them, especially his Marvel work. His Marvel work when it comes to Cap and Iron Man is phenomenal. My personal favorite thing that he does is Batman. His Batman is perfect. His Superman is just, he hits the perfect tempo. He boils down what are the most iconic things about this character, what is the costume. He's great at redesigns and just his still lives. He basically still lives these characters. He's a phenomenal artist. His mom was actually a fashion artist, which is why he got into using gouache, and that's his medium. And the guy's just insanely talented. I can go on and on talking about just the insane stuff about his artwork. It speaks for itself. The fact that people look at his art and generally think these are photos. This right here. People think this is a cosplayer. This is a painting. I absolutely love his stuff and his understanding of anatomy and the understanding of superhero genre, where he understands, it's not a costume, it's this transcendence of human avatar. Just absolutely perfect. One of my favorite artists of all time. Do you have anything to add?
No, you said it probably.
Oh, okay. So nothing he paint good?
He paint good.
Yes. Number 9 has to go go to Dan Moore. His art is insane, and unfortunately, he's the only artist I don't have a book for, but I can't wait for him to release one because his stuff's amazing. He's currently doing the Batman Superman World's Finest run. What I love about his stuff is he combines both Western traditional comics with more manga-style features. So he has bigger eyes, bigger lips. He illustrates his characters, great expressions. His characters are filled with life. What I love about the female characters is he illustrates the hair he illustrates the hair really big, so it has like a volume to it. Like it actually feels like it's part of them. Like it, not like the hair's alive doing its own thing, but it adds to just the life and the energy that the characters give off.
Put a lot of money in shampoo, don't they?
Just get the extra volume.
Yeah.
They get the Pantene.
Maybe it's Maybelline.
But yeah, I absolutely love it. The way he illustrates lips too, like lips are difficult to illustrate and make look good, but he does it. And he has really good modern redesigns. I think his Batman design's perfect, his Superman design's perfect, his redesign of Supergirl's amazing. Like he just hits it when it comes to character designs, and I love the style of art that he makes. I love what he does. One of the best new artists in the industry. I mean, he's been in the industry what, 5? At least he's come
at
into
least 2 years.
He's come into prominence, at least like I've known him for the last like year and a half, 2 years. But I think he's been in the industry for about 5 years now, and just absolutely insanely talented guy. I wish I had a book. I wish he would make a book because I just absolutely love his work. Number 8 is going to be one that may surprise you if you know me, but is one that I definitely think deserves the number 8 slot, and that is Alex Toth. Alex Toth is one of my favorite artists of all time because he's a comic book artist that transitioned into animation. He designed every major character for Hanna-Barbera with their superhero lineup. So Space Coast, Blue Falcon, Dynamite, the Galaxy Trio, all those guys. What really makes his art stand out and made him perfect for animation is that he was a master of figuring out how little line work I have to do to convey information. How few lines do I have to do to convince the human brain that this is a bush? How few lines do I have to do to convince you this is a fully rendered muscular human? And I love that. The use of minimalism line just impacting everything that he does. It has a purpose. It has a reason. And his just ingenious when it came to coming up with these concept and designs. Space Coast is the most unique and best designed Hanna-Barbera superhero ever. Blue Falcon and Dynamite are Batman and Robin, the Galaxy Trio. Guess what? They're the Fantastic Four. The Herculoids are He-Man. And I can go on and on, but I'm going to be nice. Space Coast is insanely unique, very creative. I love his design, and just his art is gorgeous. He really captures what makes a character a character. What makes a young boy a young boy? What makes a woman a woman? What makes a guy a guy? Like, he hits the muscles. He hits the personality. A meek, timid teenager shows it just from the design. A buff, muscular superhero, he shows it just with the design. He can break down the human body into as few shapes and lines as possible to craft a beautifully illustrated piece. Anyway, I absolutely love Alex Toth. He just understands what makes a character a character. This is also, by the way, part 3 of a 4-part series of books. There's one specifically animation. They do have one about his comic work. Absolutely amazing guy, super talented. Just, he is an amazing artist. So my number 7 pick may be a surprise considering the fact that if you've noticed, I've gone with more classical artists, more of your traditional famous comic book artists. Very few actual like newbies on the list, but I think Brian Hicks is one of those comic book artists that everyone likes in some way, shape, or form, that everyone at least draws influence from, because this man is an insanely talented artist. Part of the British invasion of comics, he was one of the first that actually sat down and redesigned costumes to look at the practicality sense of it. How would the costumes fold? How would the heroes get in it? Where would the zippers fold? Where would the armor be? And he is just insanely talented with costume design. All of his costume work that went into the Ultimate series for Marvel became the bare basic inspiration for every live action Marvel superhero. Every live action Marvel hero in the MCU is inspired by his work, and his stuff is truly amazing. His art is phenomenal. It takes time. He hits the realism perfect, and he puts in the work. He'll do actual perspective layout. He'll lightbox in a pose 18 different ways to find the perfect composition. And just the fact, the sense of realism, he kind of did what both Jim Lee is doing right now and what Neil Adams did, was he brought a new sense of realism in the comic. When Neil Adams worked in comics, brought in that realism, and everything went up to 10. He started working comics, he started to illustrate the way that he did and think about the realism of it. It elevated comics to a new sense of realism, and I absolutely love his work. By the way, this book is really good because it actually goes over some of his techniques, which is really cool.
I'll say, the fact that you're going on about how his costume designs are his biggest thing, you would think that the guy that his mother was the fashion designer, you think that he would have that.
Now, that's true. Alex Ross, that is interesting, because Alex Ross is known for his classical renditions of characters, but he also does phenomenal redesign. All of Kingdom Come was redesigned. redesign. But it's interesting how Brian Hicks is really known for his redesigns. He's known for his realism, but Alex Ross is known for his hyper fantasy realism, where it is realistic, it looks like a photo, but it's still understood that there's that fantasy element, while he, who's more cartoony, definitely more comic-y, is focusing on that hyper realism in different ways. So I think that's really interesting. That's actually a really good observation that I've never made that connection with. So good job.
What you hear? That's your
Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah.
Words no words.
Number 6 is one that not only is one of my personal favorite artists, but it's one that I know is one of yours, and that is Todd McFarlane. That's right.
Todd McFarlane USA.
You had to make the joke, didn't you? So, Todd McFarlane, co-founder of Image Comic, creator of Spawn. I love his art. I actually recently just filmed a video talking about my top 10 favorite art books, and this is in there. I absolutely love his art because it's gothic. It's unique, it's cartoony, but detailed. He's really good at making unique faces, really good at unique compositions. It's super detailed. I absolutely love the work that he puts in, and he always asks the question, can I make it look cooler? Can I make it look sexier? What's the one thing that I can make to make this book even better? And I love the idea that he pushes it further. And this book, The Devil's in the Detail, has the perfect name because it is really the devil in the details. Like, his work is really good. Very 90s, especially when you're rereading Spawn. And I definitely don't think he's a good writer, but visually his art is just insanely inspirational for me. I absolutely love the designs, and I know you're a huge Spawn fan, so is there anything specific that you like about his art?
Definitely has a dark and
Gothic?
Yeah, definitely just have to take a dark and gothic way to it that's just unique for his time. Just unique for just... I don't know, I like
the 90s was definitely known for over the detail, like, it's the dark age of comics for a reason. And while I definitely think McFarlane did tribute to that, more Liefeld in his tomfoolery and badness, but I definitely think there is something really good that does draw people still to his art. I absolutely love it, and I could talk about McFarlane all day. He is the most successful comic book artist in history.
It's
like,
kind of like the Hunchback of Notre Dame of this, like, instead of like that for what that did for Disney, how that was like dark. And it touches on dark topics even that are unique to that aren't really done it.
And another thing about it is, like, the guy co-created Venom, and he also forever changed how people drew Spider-Man, both in motion and the webs. Like, nobody drew Spider-Man's webs or like him swinging the same after McFarlane, because he set that bar higher. He took the foundation that John Romito Sr. laid and just built on it and made it more, again, he made it cooler, made it sexier, and that's what I like about it. He always pushes the envelope. Halfway through the list, and number 5 has to go to George Perez. And George Perez, let me tell you, this man is insanely influential. This man is inspiring to me, and I appreciate his art more as an adult now than I did as a kid. First off, he actually co-created Cyborg, Raven, Starfire, and recreated Beast Boy for the Teen Titans lineup. He did that. He is a master of team books, and I think that's really what he excels in. I mean, the dude did Avengers, Teen Titans, Justice League, Crisis on Infinite Earths. He kind of had something to prove almost. Like, at the time, team books were not something people sought after because it was more work for less money. It was the same page rates, but he took it as a challenge. He personally said, I'm going to do that. He did Justice League versus Avengers. He drew so many superheroes, he gave himself 10 tonight. The man is a legend. I'm sad that he passed last year. He was just one of my heroes because he was also one of the first, if not the first, prolific Puerto Rican comic book artist in the industry. He co-created the first Puerto Rican superhero, White Tiger. And, you know, I'm Cuban Puerto Rican, so I really find that, like, really kind of inspiring for me personally. And I really didn't appreciate his artwork until I was an adult. I really didn't appreciate everything that he did. I really didn't appreciate... Oh, by the way, Coco's jumping trying to get up here. That's why we just like...
accidentally girded.
No, you booted the baby. No!
She was asleep and I poked her with my foot. I'm like, oh my god, I'm so sorry.
Back to George Perez, just an absolute legend. Seriously, one of my favorite comic book artists of all time. As an adult, I admire his work more. Any thoughts?
Yes.
Yes. Now, number 4 is one of the greatest comic book artists of all time, in my opinion. The guy that just changed the bar. When he started working in the industry, everything went up to 10. He raised the bar, and that's the one and only Neil Adams. Again, another artist that actually died last year. Neil Adams is an artist that I really didn't realize how much I appreciated him until I started diving into the history of comics. Now, the book that I have actually deals with a lot of Silver and Golden Age creators, but there is a whole chapter on Neil Adams in here. This is a really good book because it goes over a lot of different creators, but Neil Adams is one of those artists that he changed the game. He was the first artist that actually worked for Marvel and DC simultaneously without changing his name. He started different unions. He tried to create different publishing groups. He was a father figure and a mentor to many creators still working in the industry. When he drew Batman, everyone drew Batman like him. He was that guy that raised the bar because comics were a little cartoony, but they definitely were realistic. What he did was he set the bar. He raised the realism. His artwork and experimental panel layout, like, the guy changed how comics were told, how they were drawn, how they looked. The man was just a absolute genius. He can't write. I mean, we all can agree Batman Odyssey is terrible, but visually, his visual language and understanding of comics is almost second to none. He is one of the greatest comic book artists of all time. It is sad that he did pass last year. I think a couple months actually after Perez or before Perez. Yeah, I think he died a few months before Perez. We'll put the timeline right here. So just one of those creators. They still reference him and honor him in DC Comics like today. I was reading some Batman books and they still have tributes to him because of his work and just the legacy that he left on the industry, especially on the character. I mean, he co-created Ra's al Ghul, he co-created Talia, Man-Bat, just so much that he did, especially for Batman, but also Green Lantern and Green Arrow. Like, he is just one of those artists that you can always go back to, you can always reference, you can always see that influencing hand still to this day. My number 3 pick is no surprise, but I find it funny how I ranked him higher than Neil Adams. I'm going from one iconic Batman artist to another with Jim Lee. Okay, it's been well known I'm a huge Jim Lee fan, and personally, out of all of the comic book artists that I've mentioned so far, excluding the 2 that are coming up, he's probably the most influence on my style. I'm in love with his type of cross-hatching. His work is just beautiful. He comes into the industry in the 90s, and while it is very 90s, he refined it into a new level that just blows my mind. He kinda, again, did what Neil Adams did. He raised the bar in realism, raised the bar in quality of art, and again, after he drew Batman, everyone drew Batman like him. But what I love about him too is that his anatomy is near perfect. He has the perfect understanding of cartooning it, because remember, comics, despite how realistic it is still a form of cartooning. We are taking the human form and applying it in a non-traditional representation way. I mean, we don't see shading as tiny lines. That's just an artistic decision. So his ability to perfectly distinguish on how cartoony is just perfect, because he hits it where it's still beautiful anatomy but exaggerated. His women are beautiful, his guys are buff and muscular, his costume design choices are phenomenal, great at redesign, super creative. He had his own publishing company, because remember, he co-founded Image Comics at Wildstorm Studios under it, created a bunch of characters, and then sold that to DC, where he's the chief creative executive. I think he actually got a promotion because DC was on fire and firing a bunch of people. So the guy's insane. I love watching his streams, because he streams on Twitch, but they always post the recordings of it on VZA, which they actually shouted us out, which was awesome.
That's awesome.
They commented on the Presto video and I just saw it. I'm like, oh my goodness. Yeah, seriously, I will admit his streams are just 5 minutes of him drawing, but then he drops a nugget, just a nugget of pure genius, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's insane. I was never taught that in art school. He is just, I can go on and on and on about how much I love Jim Lee, how much I love his art, how much I like his philosophy with character designs, how much I love his visual storytelling. His art takes time, but it is worth it, because it's truly some of the most inspirational and personally influential art that I've seen. Again, excluding the 2 artists coming up, his artwork is insane. His inker is super talented, because I actually tried to go out and get the rough cuts of his comics where it's just the pencils. They go by different names: unwrapped, original prints, pencils, artisan editions. His inker is literally making thousands of decisions per panel, and I'm gonna put his name because I always get it wrong, and I gotta give this guy credit because his inker is insanely talented. Shout out to him too, because he is one of the best inkers in the business. Any thoughts?
Yeah, but it was I don't think you breathe whenever you say these, so I don't remember what it was. It was 50 comments back, I think.
So, fun fact, I took singing lessons as a kid, and while I can't sing, I learned how to properly control my diaphragm and my breathing, so that I can talk. Asthma. Yeah, exactly, which is difficult because I do have asthma and it affects everything, but I can talk for a really long time, properly controlling my breath, or I can hide when I have to stop to breathe, and so I can talk for a really long time.
And typically, whenever you wait for somebody to take a breath before you cut them off or say something, you can't exactly do it with him, so it makes this argument really funny. That's why I'm really glad he has very sensitive nipples.
No! Not my nipples! And number 2, my second all-time favorite comic book artist of all time. You are trying to make me laugh, aren't you?
Yeah.
It's working. Have to give it to Steve Ditko. This man, the myth, the legend.
The dick.
Why do you do this? So, Steve...
Oh, sorry, Ditko.
Why do you do this? So, Steve Ditko, he didn't do much. He just created Spider-Man. Okay, co-created, but we're all aware of Stan Lee's dubious actual, involvement in his works. But he also created Doctor Strange, Mr. A, The Question, and recreated Blue Beetle. His artwork is gorgeous because he was one of the first comic book artists that focused on hands, telling a story through the visual language of hands. Hands and faces are our most expressive parts, and he understood that because in comics, he could just do a fist, but he incorporated the visual language of a hand. He was the master of hands. Go ahead and make your joke.
What joke?
Exactly. So
hand jobs.
What I like about his art is that it's inspiring. It has a scale to it. He would actually study different martial arts so that he can draw characters with different fighting styles. Now, interestingly, he did believe in Ayn Rand's philosophy, so he was an objectivist. He did believe in some interesting things, which did influence his artwork. It did influence his creations. I mean, the dude created Hawk and Dove. Yeah, there's that, and I do want to point that out. However, I still think there is just immense value. Every time I look at his artwork, I can always find something new, something interesting. He also got his start in horror, so he's able to craft a horror style to his art, but embraces superhero work. One of my favorite things that he worked on was The Fly for old MLJ, which eventually became Archie Comics, and his work is just inspiring. Out of all the comic book artists I've mentioned, number one, which we all know who it is, I mean, if you watch my videos, you know, but I'm still going to tell you guys, Steve Ditko, Jim Lee, and George Perez are the most influential on this list to me personally. I love their styles, I love their artwork, and I draw insane influence from them. Neil Adams and Todd McFarlane, yes. Brian Hitch, also with my designs. Alex Toth, of course, with minimalism work. Dan Mora, a little bit more. Again, he's still new, but I am seeing an influence from him. And Alex Ross, I mean, it's Alex Ross, everyone rips off and is influenced by him.
So you gotta give Mora a little more?
Yeah, but Steve Ditko has always been there. When I was a kid, my dad would read me old Blue Beetle comics, the Ted Kord Blue Beetle. I grew up reading the 70s comics that my dad grew up on. I grew up with those, and they've always been in kind of like internally in my creative engine. I've always been pulling from these artists and this genre of comics, this style of comics, and Steve Ditko has been there from day one, you know, recreating Blue Beetle, and I have so many fond memories of my dad just sitting me on his lap and like reading them to me, and absolutely love Steve Ditko's work. But now we're going to go on to number one, my favorite comic book artist of all time. It's no surprise, he gets the top shelf for a reason right there. Let's dive into it. My number one favorite comic book artist of all time is Jack the King of Comics Kirby, and this comes to no surprise. If you talk to me for more than 5 minutes or watch any of my videos, I'm always mentioning this dude, but that's because he's the literal king of comics. He is the most creative and influential creator in comics, period. You study comics, you study Kirby. The man co-created every major Marvel superhero, excluding Doctor Strange and Spider-Man. Though he did do the original design for Spider-Man, though it was never seen, legend has it influenced the design of Ted Kord Blue Beetle, so there you go.
There's a legend about him?
Yeah, there's tons of legends. Like, the man is the most prolific creative. 5 pages a day. He would work his butt off. He created and wrote so much for Marvel. He then went to DC and created the New Gods. Like, I could talk on and on and on, and I will be doing a dedicated video talking about why Jack Kirby's artwork stands out to me. And as you can see, I have a lot of books on Kirby. My entire top shelf is called the Kirby shelf. But I have to say, this is a really good book. Old Gods and New shows a lot of his stuff that he did for the industry, a lot of his interesting sketches for the New Gods, and a lot of his unused artwork, which is really cool. Very fun book. Hand of Fire is the most complete and comprehensive autobiography of Kirby and his life. It is an actual book. There's not like a lot of pictures in here, very few, but if you want to know about Kirby's life and the struggles that he had and just his life in general, this is the book to get. And of course, this is another one of my favorites. This is Kirby King of Comics, which goes over his artwork, his influences, how he influenced others, everything about him, a little bit of an autobiography, and it also has this amazing painting of Jack Kirby that Alex Ross did, which I actually love how Captain America's hand is on his shoulder. The man never missed a deadline once in his career, and while not everything he made was perfect, I still think that he perfectly encapsulates what a comic book is. Dynamacy, the angles, the camera work. The man is literally called the King of Comics. I cannot put to words how influential this man is, not just in comics, not just in me, but in media. You see his influence in Superman the Animated Series. You see his influence in movies. You see his influence in animation. You see it in the entire comic book industry. And for me personally, he is the artist that I constantly go back to. He's the artist that has the most influence on me, because I mentioned, while I did grow up reading a lot of Blue Beetle, I grew up with a lot of Fantastic Four. I grew up with a lot of his work. My dad had a bunch of the early old Marvel stuff, and I just loved it. I always love his art. His ability to create these intricate, like, mythology worlds for Thor, these high technology for Fantastic Four, this street level work for X-Men. Like, it's just endless creativity. He is truly the king of comics. And you see a lot of it in my work. I've recreated the Kirby Crackle. I've animated the Kirby Crackle before. I constantly reference him in my works. In fact, the comic comic I'm working on, the main character lives off of Kirby Avenue. He has been the most influential creator to me. He is just someone that I can always look at, someone I can always draw from, someone I can always learn from. And I cannot put to words how much this man's work has meant to me. His life, like his life story is just really touching to me too. Like Sarah keeps just handing me random things.
Because he just keeps taking them.
Just seriously, I cannot name a more influential artist in my life. I wish I got to meet him. He did die before I was born. I would have loved just to sit and talk to him for an hour. I never met him personally, but I always hear he was the nicest guy. Truly, there would never be a more just influenced creator in comics.
I remember you talking about him actually, like when we first met and we first started dating and everything.
Yeah, and that was what?
A decade ago?
Yeah, like a decade. Like, he has been my favorite artist for years, for like over a decade. And I've written all my papers on different artists are usually on him. I remember when I went to Pensacola, Mr. Ganji, my mentor, actually changed the rules of one of his papers so I wouldn't talk about him because he wanted to hear about my other opinions on different artists. The man's a legend. I cannot put into words just how influential. There's no video I could make that would actually do justice to this man's legacy. I've tributed his art when I did my Fantastic Four recreation. He's my favorite artist, and I can go on, and I know Sarah's getting impatient, but I want to hear what you think of his work. Because you can see the influence on my stuff. Like, Polder uses the Kirby Crackle on his hand as a direct reference to him.
Mm-hmm. And you just figured out how to do the digital Kirby Crackle as well.
Yep, I just figured out how to animate the Kirby Crackle.
Which, honestly, I think it's very clear to see in your artwork how Kirby, I think, is probably one of the most influential artists to your style. It's definitely, as your style has grown, it's matured, and it's really developed through, I really do see a lot of connection between your style now and your methods and everything compared to what we see in his. And I really can't wait to see how it develops even further.
Me too. I can go on, and I'm gonna stop. This section is already the longest one that we filmed. But seriously, if you have not read a Kirby comic, if you don't understand who Kirby is, please do it. I have so many of his books. One of my favorites is this one right here, which is just his pencils on Etrigan and a couple other books. So there's so many different things you can get that's on him. There's a magazine about him. Again, I have a whole shelf for him. Seriously, I can go on and on about it, but that is my top 10 list, and Sarah has actually come up with her favorite artists. Mike Mendel, the creator of Hellboy, absolutely talented artist. I just want to throw that in there. This video's already gone on long enough. We're both tired, and I want to hear what your guys' top 10 list is. Please let me know what your favorite artist is. Who's in your top 10? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Am I just a sucker for the old style and the old masters? Let me know. I admit I kind of am. But with that said...
And the old gods.
Actually, the best part is... Alex Ross's favorite artist is Jack Kirby, so we have that in common. But yeah, the old gods, the old masters, I love that stuff, so please let me know if I'm just a sucker for it and what your guys' favorite stuff is.
You are just a sucker for it.
Yeah, I fully admit it, I am. But with that said, like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel for more art and animation-based content. Remember, I'm J. Rod of BattleBrawlerproductions, and this is Sarah Apple of BattleBrawlerproductions. Thank you all for watching.